So I really, as a teacher, I enjoyed thinking about the Think Aloud in terms of how I read student work as well. And really, having the conversation with yourself at the end when you said, these were my expectations, and the 3 columns and the complexity and all that stuff, and really evaluating that. For me, there's a big difference between having thoughts kind of buried in my mind and being able to hear my own voice and hear it out loud. So I thought as an instructor that was really great to remember to have that metacognitive conversation around student work.
Mm-hmm. I think that, this is a perfect example of formative assessment. When we're looking at students in the process of learning and becoming professional experts in a field. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that you were just thinking out loud basically about metacognition when you're scoring papers. We should be thinking out loud, and those think-alouds that we have when we look at a student's paper are exactly what should be written as comments on the student's paper. Like, for this one, I will be writing on this paper, your 3 columns have captured the essence of some critical areas in water scarcity. Of note, really, is the global emphasis here. You got that, because in class, some of the readings were just from a United States point of view that it wasn't our problem. And you were keen enough to figure that out, and you made it into an aha moment for yourself and for other students. So my think aloud about this student's work will be part of my comments that are authentic on all of the posters that I read. And I think that sometimes teachers are not well versed in using think aloud comments or metacognitive thoughts on giving students comments, but it's really valuable to students. And students will oftentimes say, nobody's read my work like this, nobody's told me that my thinking was good, or nobody said, oh, that's an aha moment for you. I learned just as much from my students' connections with texts. I mean, and I have to rethink things because of my think aloud and their think alouds and this melding of metacognitive conversation. So I think the more we can talk about metacognitive conversation and the deeper we can go to get students to dig beyond the main idea, it will benefit them. Because, look at the program outcomes that students have to be able to work when they transition. They have to do real-time, spontaneous critical thinking. And if we don't practice that in our classrooms, how do they learn how to do that in English? It's very frightening and fearful for them. So we can use this as a scaffolding exercise. And if we model our own think aloud or our own talking to the text when we give comments, it's very powerful for them. Yeah. And especially in math, I think you can really...
I have many math thoughts going on in my head right now.
Good, Elizabeth. I'm excited to see that, because I think that oftentimes students come into the classrooms and they think there's just a simple formula. Mm-hmm. It's not about the formula, it's about the thinking behind the formula.
Well, and they don't think that they have a right to think about, and math is a really good example. And when you're talking about how you learn through the metacognitive conversation, the same thing happens to me, and there have been lots of times where somebody will go, this is how I thought about it. I multiplied instead of adding, or I looked at it this way, and then that helps me, and I can help adopt that. Because if we think about, we're building our toolboxes, we're always doing it too, right?
Yeah.
And so I can adopt strategies when I get to hear from my students as well.
Well, and that brings me to another thought. I always leapfrog onto these. Whenever we get to talk about reading apprenticeship, I get to leapfrog on ideas. It's all about this building of a community, this building of knowledge. And our students come to our classrooms oftentimes as failed students. They carry a lot of shame with them, or when they go home, they're shamed because they're in ESL class or they're in basic studies class, and people say, well, you're 50, why are you still going to school? And if we can give them the words and the voice around metacognition, On the subject area, that will translate into their real social lives and in building their families, building their communities, and building their citizenship skills that they need to have to really transition and work in our communities. So I try to point that out, and I think that these are all transferable skills that you and I are talking about today.
Well, and I think your use of the word shame is so important, because why do we shame people? It's, as a society, it's often to silence them. And so if people are living under the burden of shame, having these strategies for giving them voice in the classroom is very transformative. So.
Excellent. I love that point.